Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1971-74 off-season look at the 384 Carryon players in the league, see if they can be improved into a different year. We have gone through this process a couple times, gotten through 16 looks alphabetically by team, and we're going to pick it up tonight. Again, there are 12 players on each of the 32 teams. We're in the L's now with Las Vegas. They have 6 players from 71, 4 from 72, and 2 from 73. And we want to know if they have a better card available to them in one of their other years than the one they presently have. So we've done this now. This is a third crack at it, beginning with Las Vegas. And when we start, they do not have a guy they think gets better. What Vegas has done recently, though, is done plenty of improvement. In previous years, they improved Ken Berry, they improved Woody Fryman, Tommy Davis, Ken Berry, Tim Cullen, and I think Jim Rowland. But right now, they've done all they can do as an expansion team with improving the 12 guys they have. So they have to start addressing their needs with the rookie class and the keepers they have. So that's not as much flexibility as in previous years. All right, let's go to the next team, Milwaukee, and similar thing. Milwaukee, they drew a blank trying to improve their team. There's two ways of looking at it. One is that they love their players the way they are. The other is the players really aren't that great and don't get much better. So it's kind of how you want to look at that equation. And for instance, in this Milwaukee team, and looking at these 12 players, I think John Briggs' card is very good for his best year, as is Bill Parsons. Mick Mullins, a solid everyday third baseman with that card. Mike Torres really has his best year until he wins 20 games with Baltimore in 75. And some kids, Jim Colburn and Darrell Porter's, bloom in 73 when they get in the league. So they're going to sit with those cards for a bit. So it's not a bad gig. So let's go to the next team. And finally, we get some guys to talk about. So the Twins. We've talked about how the Twins were a veteran team. A team in the 65 series. A team with Killebrew as the MVP in 69. Bringing in Rod Carew. Winning the American League West in 69 and 70. But now the competition is going to get tough, because Kansas City is putting a very young team together that's very good. The Brewers surprised everybody by going to the playoffs last year as a wild card. And the White Sox have a really good offense and have built up their pitching and defense. So the White Sox, who historically gave the A's everything they could handle in the American League West during that era, they're in a different division. So it's up to the Twins to look for some improvement. And they found a couple guys. So Tom Murphy was in the rotation as the number 2 starter behind Burt Blyleven, with Jim Cott in the 3-hole and Dave Goltz in the 4-hole. Murphy's in there was not even a Twin. But let's take a look at Tom Murphy's card from 74 card. He goes into the bullpen. He's a relief 3. He was with Milwaukee and not the Twins during this era. He was an Angel. He kind of was an Angel of Royal, Cardinal, and then Brewer. 74, a 190 ERA in 66 appearances in the pen with a 120 whip and got MVP votes. This is what the card looks like with that 190 ERA. And the question is, do you want him to start with a 377 ERA or go to the bullpen with a 190 ERA? Here's the card. Good against righties, and actually good against lefties who doesn't give up home runs. He'd be a welcome addition to this bullpen. They presently have Hal Haydel, Pete Reichert out there. So if they did that, they'd have to find another starter. They could even try and get Dave Goltz to pitch on 3 days rest in one of his future years. So that is definitely a good option for the Twins, as Tom Murphy, or dangle him in a trade. Another player is catcher Mitterwald. Now, they had a platoon last year. Mitterwald was just facing lefties. with a 71 card. The 73 Mitterwald, if I can find that one, there we go. And then we'll just take a peek at the stats. It's actually very similar. It's the same hitting template in both years. But the difference between 71 and 73 is that he goes to a 731 OPS. He's got a little bit of slightly bit better in all of the hitting and walks and power. And then when you look at the card, you're like, oh, okay, I can see the home runs against the righties there on 17 on 4. And then the walk there, the walk on 7 if I pitch there, the 1 to 8 chance, not as good against lefties. So this would say, hey, I now want to start him against righties. I want him to be my starting catcher now instead of being a platoon catcher. So that's what you could do with Murphy and Mitterwald to improve current guys on the Twins while adding more guys later in the draft and in free agency. So that's pretty good situations there. They definitely are in play with those guys. All right, next team, the Mets. Just one player, 73 Cy Acosta. Let's see if I can bring him up for you. There he is. Let's bring up his stats. So Acosta was not actually a Met. He came up through the White Sox, and the Mets grabbed him because of 72. He comes in with a 121 whip and a .56 ERA. His splits suggest as a righty, he gets righties out. So this card in 73, from 72 to 73, the whip is a little bit better. Looking at the card, he does have a walk on 7 and 9 against righties. Against lefties, he is better because double one is an out there, but he gives up more home runs. Seems kind of sideways to me. I don't see a dramatic improvement. We want to bring him in versus righties, but I don't want anybody to get on base. I'm sure the Mets don't. And he had outs. He only had 2 on bases in this entire card against righties, and they didn't really care against lefties because they had Danny Frizella as a righty gets lefties out. And they had these cross platoons where Tug McGraw's a lefty gets righties out. So maybe Acosta, but I doubt it. It's not really worth the trouble. And don't forget, every time it's a future improvement, you'll ultimately get this card in the league because it's a good card once the 72 card is no longer available, which would be after next year. All right, next team, the Yankees. Unfortunately for the Yankees, they're kind of in this mediocre period around 500. And as it turns out, everybody they have is about as good as it gets. Horace Clarke, is near the end of his rope. Hirschberger was sort of a one-year wonder. Bloomberg and Mercer dominate with their cards. Nettles' card is in a holding pattern until 75-76. Stottlemyre's best card is in play. Lyle, again, not until 76-77 when he wins a Cy Young. Kekich doesn't get any better. Fred Bean and Munson's 73 cards might be their best ever, particularly Munson. Munson's 73 might be better than his MVP card that comes later. So the Yankees are staying pat. Oakland, the 72 World Championship team. And they identified 2 guys, Dick Green and Bob Locker. Very intriguing. Let's see if I can find each. All right, here's Dick Green. He hits for a nice batting average. But is it worth it? Let's look a little closely at the cards. We like this 71 Dick Green card we have. First of all, he's a 2 second baseman. If he's not a 1 or a 2, might not be worth the trouble, but he is a 2 in 71. But he had 12 home runs. That might be the all-time high. Well, he had 15 in 1965, but 12 home runs with that 71 card. So he's got a 354 slugging, 673 OPS, but he got hurt the following year and only played in 26 games in 72. But he had 286. This is that card. So sure, 286 is better than 244, but no home runs, and he's a 3 at second base. And when you're trying to win the World Series with Catfish Hunter and Vida Blue and Ken Holtzman, I want a 1 or a 2 at second base. I'm not even going to take a chance with a slightly better batting average. So yeah, this card might get into the league next year, but right now I'm going to stick with what I got. Which leads us to the next intriguing player, Bob Locker. why it's so intriguing. Let's bring the stats up for Bob Locker before we look at the card. Really like the 71 card we presently have. Locker was an A in 71 and 2. ERA 286, 265. The whip goes from 120 to 109. So you're thinking, all right, it gets a little bit better. ERA drops a little bit better performance. But let's take a look at the Bob Locker card. He was a righty who was really good getting lefties out. Well, now he becomes a righty who's really, really good at getting righties out now. But, oh my goodness, he is incredibly vulnerable to left-handed pitching, left-handed hitting. They get about 320 off of him. I mean, that's not good at all. I would not even consider this card for my league until I realized it was Bob Locker. And then you have to say to yourself, he's got to pitch exclusively to right-handers to be worth the trouble. Do they have that already? They do. They have got Raleigh Fingers. Fingers is dominant against righties. They really need Locker to keep doing what he did in 1971, which is get lefties out. Let's take a look at the split since we got this up, 71 and 72. Let's see how dramatic it was in batting average. So here's 71. This is just what we have now. Look at those lefties. A $183. And righties are hitting 283 against them. But that $183 for lefties is what we really like. Because he's the best pitcher on Oakland getting lefties out as a right-hander. Better than Catfish Hunter. So that's what we like about Bob Locker. So what happens a year later in this 72? This card you're looking at right down there. And you look at this card. Sure, righties are hitting $1.80 against him. But what are left-handed batters doing, folks? 347? 34 hits and 98 at-bats. Granted, no home runs, only 4 doubles. But this card supports these stats. And congratulations, Strat-O-Matic, for nailing it. Yeah, 347 batting average. I don't want him on my team. I just don't want this guy on my team. I can't trust it. There's going to be times where you're going to have to pitch an inning, 2 or maybe 3 innings or an extra inning game. And there's too many left-handed batters on these teams. Most teams have 5 or 6 lefties, and they're just going to pepper this guy. So I don't know if I'm even going to use this card next year in the year of 72. We might just retire him or see what happens in 73 or 4. I just don't like this card. So maybe I'm overdoing it a bit. But all right, next team, Ohio, and then we'll do Philadelphia and call it. Ohio has a shortstop, Daryl Thomas, who has a very disappointing 72. Let's take a look at that. Daryl Thomas is 72. Full season, 230. But in 74, he's up to 247. Not a lot of improvement, but still better. So let's see what the card looks like for Daryl Thomas. And there it is. Oh boy. Unfortunately, they really need him to play shortstop because they have Dave Cash at second base. So he's a 3 at second, but it's not going to be utilized. So that's a bad sign. He was a C stealer, now he's a D. And it's what you think. It's exactly what the stats say he is. It's just he's an okay guy. So just not worth the trouble unless they lose their second baseman. So and the last team tonight, the team drafting first, Philadelphia, and we'll call it. And this is kind of a fun one here, which is why I want to stop here. There's a lot of evaluation here. So the Phillies are starting to find these pieces that will lead them into their middle of the decade and late decade, and eventually a world championship in 80. And so we know Schmidt's going to come along. But the first guy, Boa, all right, so his 71 card is in the league now. But we're always looking to see what we can do with Larry's batting average. And so he goes, in 74, he's hitting 275. These are his high numbers. He's going to be a 1 at shortstop. Doesn't have a gold glove. They gave him 1 in 72, but for some reason didn't give him 1 in 71, 3, and 4. Let's take a look at this Boa card, if we can. If I can find him. There he is. Here's the Boa card. Again, he's a 1. But his 71 year, look at that, 600. He led the league in at-bats in 1971 as a 25-year-old shortstop. And that card looks pretty similar. He's going to be a 1. He's going to be an ace stealer. He has this template. The only difference is his 3 column. He's got an out on 7 and 6 and a single chance on 8. So now you see it's an automatic single dot on 8 and 6. About the same against lefties. I don't know if that's enough to justify using a draft pick to improve him. You can be patient with Boa. You're not going to see like a up and down, sine wave of great and lousy performances. He's going to be a pretty steady player through the whole decade. Just make sure he's a 1. And I think that might just leave him alone. Don't know if signing up for this will cost you a draft pick is worth it. Plus, I think he might still bat near the bottom of the lineup because they still got some nice bats here. The next guy is Denny Doyle. Now this guy, it is kind of worth improvement because his 71 card is worse than Boa. He's a 231 hitter, and he's a 3 second baseman. So can I improve on both of those? Take a look here. And the answer is, yeah. He's a 2 second baseman, and he is a, let's see his card. So there he is. He's hitting 273 now. So that's 40 points all across the board. But his defense improves. He's a B hit and runner. He's got a walk on 5, homer chance on 8. Looks a lot like the Boa card, actually. And then you weren't really using him against lefties anyway because you have Terry Harmon on this team. So he was in a platoon anyway. It's just that the platoon gets a lot better versus righties, as does the defense. This might be worth it. This might be worth it to help all the pitchers, improving the defense. And so I think this card might, if they have opportunity to improve Doyle, they should probably take it. And the third and final guy on this team that we'll do tonight is Luzinski. Greg Luzinski will compare 72 and 3. Sorry, let's go back to 71 when he came into the league. So he comes into the league in 71, hits 300, 3 home runs at first base. Then they move into the outfield, full season, 18 homers and a 281. But in 73, he's up to 29 home runs. 29 home runs and a 285 average. Let's take a look at that card. And there it is. There's that card there for Luzinski. And the other thing about all the power and home runs, his defense. He's a 3 in left field. You're not going to get any better defense for Luzinski in this decade than that. So a 3 defense, homer, and homer won a 13 on 6. Batting average is about the same. What you're paying for in the improvement is simply home runs and slugging. 11 more homers in 50 more at-bats and 30 points in slugging, plus 29 MVP votes. So, if the Phillies were suddenly wanting to flip the switch and dramatically get better, go from worst to first, you'd make all these improvements. You may want to be a little bit patient with the Phillies. They don't have all the pieces yet. It's going to take them 73, 74, 75, 76 before they start getting the Gary Maddoxes and they trade for a Dave Cash and Jay Johnstone and guys like that to make the Phillies a real contender. So, well, that's it tonight for the analysis of Carryons from 71 to 74. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.